I would like to compare two films that are quite meaningful to me, especially throughout my childhood. They are two different takes on the same story, Robin Hood. They're two different films from two different decades. Both of them have many plus points, but they're very different outcomes. So I'm going to start off by discussing Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the adaptation starring Kevin Costner, which came out shortly after one of his major successes, which is Dances with Wolves from the previous year. This film takes us to Jerusalem as a starting point, where Robin is on crusade and he is captive, being tortured. One of his compatriots is about to be killed. He puts himself in his place to save the fellow's life. As a result, they manage to escape, and his compatriot Azim, played by Morgan Freeman, feels that he owes Robin his life and therefore wants to follow him to Robin's hesitance throughout his journey until he can repay him. They end up going together on this adventure. They return to England. Initially, Robin is incredibly relieved and happy to be reaching England again. He embraces a fistful of the mud from Dover, from the white cliffs of Dover, and kisses it. He's missed his home turf a lot. But basically, as soon as he enters the country, things turn dark pretty quickly. And it starts off with he notices a little child being chased by men of the Sheriff of Nottingham, who, in the absence of King Richard the Lionheart, who's himself on crusade and stuck out there, is ruling England. Robin essentially saves the kid's life, who was rather innocent, only being blamed for killing an animal who allegedly belonged to the sheriff. Robin kills the sheriff's men and as a result becomes an outlaw. The Sheriff of Nottingham main intention is to capture Robin and have him killed. Having said that, many civilians get in the way of the sheriff's intentions. The story is rather typical in terms of Robin's identity and Robin's intentions. He intends to repay all of the peasants who the sheriff has attempted to kill and do harm to, and take from the rich, including the sheriff, and give back to the peasants, who most of them join his clan of merry men in the woods of Sherwood. Obviously, Maid Marian comes in to the question. She is held captive by the Sheriff of Nottingham, who wants to keep her. Robin wants her as well. There are quite large-scale battles that begin. Some rather scenic moments. Robin and the merry men become soon close friends, albeit the infamous rocky start where he's confronted by Little John Little, on the river. Ultimately they become an unbeatable team. There are some climactic action moments which are very spectacular, even somewhat spectacular for the 90s. And the story ends as it ends, but it's a very dark tale, a dark twist on it. The lead actors, obviously Kevin Costner playing Robin Hood, Morgan Freeman as Azim. Then we have obviously Alan Rickman playing the sheriff, I think one of his most powerful roles. Certainly, I'm pretty sure an inspiration for him to play his sinister character in Harry Potter series. And then obviously you've got Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio in the role of Marian. People might know her from her little role in Scarface with Al Pacino. And they are the top-billed characters in the version. What strikes me immediately is the fact that we have a very culturally infamous English tale, British tale from Nottingham with Robin Hood, and the leading cast are Americans. That doesn't necessarily have to bother me, because some Americans are very good at, first of all, delivering an accent, but also understanding the culture. That was proven very recently with Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody, who I felt was invisible and certainly, in my opinion, took on the accent incredibly faultlessly. But with Kevin Costner, that is not quite the case. I feel that his American was always there. I don't quite understand it. Morgan Freeman had a fairly decent Middle Eastern accent, but the accent slipped occasionally, especially when he was shouting. There was some transparency in that, possibly because Kevin Costner is an American playing the lead. Small spoiler alert, Christian Slater plays Will Scarlet, who is one of the Merrie Men. He's actually the brother of Robin, and Christian, as we all know, is an American actor, so a little bit of American influence in this film, potentially a bit too much, although I'm very grateful that Alan Rickman is a very British actor and British person, at least was, and I think he was potentially the most convincing character in the film. So yes, it's sentimentally quite a valuable film, but it's got its faults. It's an engaging film. It's a film that brings me back to my childhood when I was first introduced to it. I think of it fondly. I've seen it quite recently. I was engaged by it. It's got a good, strong narrative. It's photographed very nicely, powerful music. The second comparison is obviously the story of Robin Hood and his Merry Men, 1952. This is possibly the first one that I saw, and the one that I really fell in love with. It's a much lighter take on the story, Walt Disney production. Yes, there have been some Walt Disney films that were a little bit darker, but I think they felt quite rightly that this one should be one of the more uplifting ones. I think it's an all-round well-made film. Well, it's not comparable to Prince of Thieves, but it does have suspenseful moments. It has action, it has thrills, it has romance, it has all the things that you might want from it. I think Richard Todd playing Robin Hood was one of the best choices in casting. I wasn't, and still am not, very familiar with Richard Todd as an actor. I think he's most famous, in my opinion, for Robin Hood, which makes him invisible, makes the character invisible, brings out the British accent that I personally think Robin Hood deserves. Then you've got actresses like Joan Rice playing Mariam, and I think she was outstanding, and ultimately Peter Finch playing the sheriff. I really liked him. I also really liked Alan Rickman playing the sheriff, a more recognisable face, but still was able to disappear into the role a bit more. But when it comes to the Peter Finch playing the sheriff, I think not only was he invisible, but he had the facial features and the slightly larger forehead that really, in my opinion, showed or demonstrated a more sinister character, which I think really is deserved. The ensemble within that film is pretty outstanding. Here it is, as the cover, that is Richard Todd playing Robin Hood and his Merry Men. You've even got a picture of Friar Tuck doing a little sword fight with him. I think comparing that with, for example, here we go, Kevin Costner. They're two different takes, two different tales, the same story but two different approaches to them. I personally gave Robin Hood, the story of Robin Hood and his Merry Men, a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It's a shorter film. It really tucks you into the characters and it gives you a warm feeling throughout. It's also more musical and more jolly. Prince of Thieves, I gave it a 6. I like the film. It's engaging. It's well photographed. It uses some of the innovation from the early 90s. But again, I'm not quite engaged as much as I want to be engaged by the performances.